Good evening. It's approximately 8:50 in the evening in Austin, Texas. I'm James Exum. My pen name for YouTube is Sakshi, S-A-K-S-H-I, which means the witness. It also means the self, the spirit, the soul. There's numerous definitions for that particular word. You're welcome to look them up if you like. Today I'm continuing with chapter 14 of the Bhagavad Gita. This is a series I'm doing. I'm doing each chapter. There's 18 chapters, as you well know or should know or will know. And I'm going through each one and doing a comparative discourse. It's comparative because I'm using some of the language of the commentaries of the great sage of the 8th century Common Era, who was Adi Sankara. Of course, I'm a commentator of 21st century. So let us begin chapter 14. Here comes the introduction, and I'll read part and remark on most. Read and remark, commentate. The introduction. The Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, a spiritual and philosophical classic, has attracted the attention of seekers, philosophers, and commentators across the centuries. Chapter 14, known as the Gunas Traya Vibhaga Yoga, or the Yoga of the divisions of the Three Gunas, explores the fundamental qualities that govern existence and behavior. I'm reading from my own writing here, so occasionally I will read without transliteration and speak of myself in the third person. I'll try not to do that. Traditionally attributed to Vyasa, that's the writer of the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita. He was the original compiler and narrator. The text offers a nuanced exploration of the human condition, speaking of his writing of the 14th chapter. Over the millennium, thinkers like Adi Sankara and contemporary scholars such as myself have provided distinct interpretation, enriching its perennial wisdom for successive generations, keeping it up to date for the modern population, so to speak. This comparative discourse aims to examine chapter 14 through three powerful lenses: Vyasa's original exposition, Shankara's classical Advaita Vedanta commentary, and the modern interpretation, which is my approach. I'm also known as Sakshi, James Exum, also known as Sakshi. Through this exploration, we illuminate the evolving meanings and resonances of the Gita's message, revealing how ancient insight continues to inspire contemporary seekers. A seeker is someone deeply involved in the exploration of the philosophical aspects of yoga. There's the physical aspects, the asana, there's the philosophical, which has to do with the Gita, has to do with the Vedas, the Upanishads, in other words, the great texts having to do with yoga and its wisdom. Vyasa's exposition, when you hear me give these sort of mini introductions, what I'm doing is I'm going with the headings I've given each section of this discourse. Vyasa's exposition, the fundamental wisdom. Vyasa, the sage traditionally regarded as Gita's redactor and narrator, frames chapter 14 as a direct teaching from Krishna to Arjuna. Now we're speaking of the Lord Krishna and Prince Arjuna. If you've made it this far, or if you just stumbled across this, then you will know who the characters in the Bhagavad Gita are. And if you don't, you're welcome to look them up through Wikipedia or Yogapedia and do a little catch-up work, and then you'll be up to speed, so to speak, and then you can come back and hear me. You can also rewind and hear me again, and hopefully you'll eventually absorb the meaning of what I'm trying to say. Following the metaphysical revelations of earlier chapters, Krishna introduces the notion of the three gunas. Now you're saying to yourself, what is a guna? G-U-N-A-S. G-U-N-A is the singular, S is the plural, with the S is the plural. Again, Wikipedia will help you, and so will, and sorry about that, I was dabbing something off the screen. I thought I saw something on it, but I didn't. I'm post-cataractic, so I'm seeing little things float occasionally across my field of vision. So the gunas, what are they? There's three of them, as I said, and they're characterized. Sattva is the first one. There's the three, sattva, and then there's raja, and then there's tamas. Sattva is characterized by light, clarity, and harmony. Sattva draws beings towards wisdom, health, and happiness. Its influence brings about knowledge and detached joy. Raja is defined by passion, movement, and desire. The rajas impels individuals towards action, ambition, and restlessness. Its dominance leads to attachment and suffering born of ceaseless striving, which we do not want to continue to strive. We want to reach our goal, which is moksha. Tamas, marked by darkness, ignorance, and inertia. Tamas results in confusion, lethargy, and delusion, binding the soul in the cycles of neglect and error, which is also called samsara. Vyasa has Krishna describes how every aspect of existence is shaped by these three forces. So there's the definition. They shape us. Think of them as emotions that are sort of blended together within our personalities. You have good guys, you have bad guys, and you have neutral guys. You have wise guys, you have ignorant people, and you have people that are energetic towards their goals. They're goal-oriented, so to speak. As Krishna describes how every aspect of existence is shaped by these forces, the interplay of the gunas determines the characters of thought, actions, birth, and even the path of the soul after death. Well, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Karma also plays into that. I did an earlier video strictly on karma, and it's gotten some good traction, so to speak, as they say on the internet and on YouTube. The YouTubers say traction, which means it's gaining some attention. And the path of the soul after death. The wise person, according to Krishna, learns to discriminate the play of these gunas and strives to transcend them, attaining the state beyond their influence, which is called moksha. I mentioned that a moment ago, which is another word for liberation. These words are generally Sanskrit in nature. Sometimes they're Hindi, and of course, of Hindu origins, and there's several dozen, if not scores of Hindu dialects. Vyasa's narrative, rich in metaphor and directed spiritual counsel, emphasizes that freedom is found not by suppressing or rejecting any guna, but by understanding their workings and achieving equanimity amidst their flux. The chapter culminates in Krishna's declaration that those who come to know him as the transcendental origin of the gunas are free from the cycles of birth and death. Well, if you know your soul and you basically replace your ego with the soul, so to speak, if you transcend to the soul and transcend away from the ego, then you are free of life and death. The soul is eternal, the creator is eternal. Brahma is eternal. The spark of divinity he placed in the human body as the soul, the Atman, the Sakshi, the conscious, and the consciousness. These are all eternal. The body is a transient entity. The soul is eternal. The creator is eternal. I've gone over this several times in previous videos, so I won't be redundant about that tonight. The chapter culminates in Krishna's declaration that those who come to know him as the transcendental origin of the gunas are free from the cycles of birth and death. Sometimes I repeat myself, but sometimes these sentences, these thoughts, these phrases deserve repeating because of their importance. Shankara's commentary, here's another heading. Adi Sankara, the 8th century philosopher and preeminent exponent of Advaita Vedanta, offers a rigorous and penetrating elucidation on chapter 14. For Sankara, the gunas are not merely psychological traits, but the very constitutes of Maya, the illusory power that veils the non-dual reality of Brahman. Shankara interprets Krishna's teaching as an invitation to viveka, which is discernment. I like the word discernment as opposed to discrimination. In the 20th century, the word discrimination took on a very negative meaning, in the United States at least. To recognize that the gunas pertain to prakriti alone, whereas the Atma itself is eternally pure, unconditioned, and unaffected. Prakriti means nature, basically. There's two different portions. There's energy and mass, so to speak, like Einstein. His thoughts on the subject. The bondage of the soul, for Shankara, arises from avidya, which means ignorance, of one's true nature as Brahman, and from misidentifying with the gunas and their products. Transcending the gunas, Shankara stresses that liberation moksha is attained not by modifying the gunas, excuse me, but by realizing that the self is the witness, Sakshi, distinct from the modifications of prakriti, nature, through sravana, listening to the teachings, manana, reflective contemplation, and nidayasana, profound meditation. The seekers come to see the gunas as objects, thus ceasing to be entangled by them. Excuse me 1 second. Thank you. Because of my advanced age and the fact I have Parkinson's disease, or Parkinsonian disease, my voice box is affected sometimes when I speak for a long period of time. So I had to take a sip of liquid there to bring it back to from doing what it was doing. The gunas, if the seeker comes to see the gunas as objects, then it's easier to cease being entangled in them. The role of sattva, which is the first one, that's the good one, while sattva is considered the most conducive guna for spiritual progress, even it must ultimately be transcended. Shankara often evokes the analogy of the thorn used to remove another thorn. Sattva helps remove rashas and tamas, but itself be left behind to realize the self, but must itself be left behind to realize the self. Surrender knowledge. Shankara underscores Krishna's statement that those who understand the distinction between the gunas and the self, and who surrender to the Supreme, attain immortality and not reborn even at cosmic dissolution. So you have birth, preservation, and death, or you have creation, preservation, and dissolution. Thus, Shankara's commentary transforms Vyasa's psychological and cosmological teachings into a subtle metaphysics. The drama of the gunas is an appearance superimposed on the unchanging reality of the self. If this sounds a bit philosophical, well, you hit it right on the nail on the head, because it is. I'm an old yoga philosopher. I'm a yogi. I've been at this about 50 years now, a little more, a little in the neighborhood, close enough. My thoughts on it, now we're going to my heading, my thoughts on it. I provide a modern and comparative perspective on the Gita, harmonizing traditional insight with the language and concerns of contemporary seekers. My interpretation are shaped both with scholarly rigor and experimental inquiry. The psycho-spiritual reading that I often present the gunas as psychological forces observable in everyday life. I encourage readers to engage in self-study, observing the play of sattva, rajas, and tamas within their thoughts, emotions, and actions. For myself, the Gita's wisdom is not otherworldly, but practical, inviting ongoing self-reflection and conscious living. Being in the moment is the way they say it. Being mindful, practicing mindfulness is another way it's said. Swami Satchidananda is the one that introduced mindfulness into American psychology. He also introduced it into the Veterans Administration before he passed away. He passed away, I think, in '08. He was one of my swamis, one of my teachers for several years. I watched him on YouTube like you're watching me on YouTube. So what goes around comes around, I suppose, and a lot of my sayings actually come from his great teachings. And then I give a couple of more approaches. I say, rather than viewing the gunas as obstacles to be overcome, I highlight their dynamic interplay as necessary for growth. I draw parallels with modern psychology, likening the gunas to tendencies identified in personality theory, and I propose that spiritual maturity involves integrating rather than denying aspects of the psyche. Well, I'm an old follower of Dr. Carl Jung, and so I'm also influenced by his theories, his thoughts, and his teachings, and his books, of course. I have quite a collection of his writings, some of them first editions, some of them rather rare. Transcendence and immanence, while affirming Shankara's call to transcend the gunas, I also emphasize the importance of immanence, that is, recognizing the sacred within the play of nature itself. I suggest that enlightenment is not merely an escape from the world, but a realization of unity amidst the world's diversity. I know I write on a deeper level than most people even think, but I'm a narrator and I'm a YouTuber, and I write my own scripts, and this is how I think and how I write and how I teach. The more you listen to me, the easier it will become to understand my thoughts and my patterns of speaking and so forth. And I'm an acquired taste. I remember in the Air Force back in the early '70s. I was taken off base by some boys in the hospital squadron. I worked in the hospital out at Bergstrom Air Force Base, which is now Bergstrom International Airport. And they took me across to this little bar right off base, and I'd never had a drink in my life of alcohol. And so they said, "Hey, Exum," that's my last name. People in the military call you by your last name generally, and they said, "Hey, what do you want to drink?" And I said, "Well, what's the least potent?" And they said, "Well, water, of course." I said, No, I mean, as far as an alcoholic. They said, "Oh, beer." And so I said, "Well, let me have one of those." Well, it took me about 6 weeks to get used to that taste. And if you say that you drank your first beer and you enjoyed the taste of it, then I'm not necessarily going to believe you. I'm not saying you're a fibber. I'm just saying it's hard to believe, and it is. So I'm one of those people that I'm an acquired taste. Once you learn to listen to me, listen to what I'm saying, and understand my voice pattern and the way I speak and the way I go from seriousness to joking a little bit here and there, I think it'll be easier for you to adjust to me and to assimilate what I'm trying to teach you, to pass on to your generation, whether you're younger or older than me. I want to transfer as much data that I've learned over the last 50 years before I leave this earth to fertile minds that want to learn more about the power of yoga and the knowledge of yoga. I really do want to pass on a lot of knowledge before I leave the service, as much as possible. My goal I just started this a little over a month ago, and I'm already up to, I believe, I'm up to 34, 35 videos so far, and my goal is to produce 50 before September the 30th. That day doesn't mean anything to you, but it's my 75th birthday, and that's my goal. That will be within a couple of months. I will produce 50 videos, written, directed, narrated by, scene decorations, makeup. Oh, well, makeup. See, there's part of my humor. The whole 9 yards, as they used to say. So my discourse situates the Gita both in its historical context and as a living text relevant to the challenges of postmodern existence. My approach champions inclusivity and recognizes the value of dialogue between the East and Western philosophies. I'm always doing comparative studies and comparative dialogues and historical dialogue compared to contemporary dialogue, and I'm always looking for the things that don't quite match or things that are paradoxical. That way I can also teach those in future videos, things of that nature in future videos. So the comparative synthesis and convergences and divergences, I do this quite often in these, in my discourses. I do a comparison, and then I do convergences where Adi Sankara and I go down the same path, and we think the same way, and sometimes we diverge. A convergence, an easy way to understand a convergence, if you have two small streams that are coming together at a certain point in the geography of the landscape, and they blend together and become a larger stream or even a small river, that is a convergence. Divergence is when they split apart, of course, the opposite. And I'm not trying to insult anyone, I'm just trying to inform those that aren't informed on those two words. That's all I'm doing. I never try to insult anyone unless they really deserve it and they're acting against human nature and society. I will go after those rascals. Okay, so here we go. The combined perspectives of Vyasa, Sankara, and myself yield a layered and evolving understanding of chapter 14. Vyasa's vision is both cosmological and ethical, situating the gunas as the warp and weft of existence. When you weave a blanket, you have a warp, which is the long side of the blanket, and a weft, which is the one that crosses over. That's the shorter side of the blanket. The shorter distance it crosses the weft. The long distance is the warp. Think of warp drive in Star Wars, and it's easy to remember that. So that warp and weft is very important in existence. Shankara's ideas about the Vedanta radicalizes this by denying ultimate realities of the gunas, seeing them as projections upon Brahman. Well, who can project anything upon Brahman? You know, Brahman is without attributes. Well, if you get into the philosophy of yoga, you will find that there are other characters, so to speak, that have certain powers. Maya is one, Isvara is another. Again, these are much higher on the chain of understanding, and so you'll have to teach yourself, as I did, or view videos on the subject, or however you want to handle it. It's up to you to bring yourself up to speed. So the means of liberation, but Vyasa's Gita prescribes devotion, which is one of the yogas, is bhakti, discernment, viveka, and disciplines as means to transcend the gunas. Shankara privileges knowledge, jnana, as the direct path to freedom, seeing through the illusions. I advocate integrative approaches. Now, I got that from Swami Satchidananda. He believed in integration of religious ideas and concepts and universal acceptance, so to speak, as long as it was on the right path, the right dharma, and using the right karma. I advocate that integrative approach combining insight, devotion, and transformative actions. And it goes on, but I'm not going to worry about that. And now I'm going to jump down, yes, to the conclusion, and I'm just going to read you this. Chapter 14 of the Gita remains a powerful and evocative teaching, charting the subtle laws that govern the soul journey through nature. As a contemporary guide, I invite everyone to actually participate in the drama of earthly existence. I want you to observe, integrate, and ultimately transcend the world. How else can you reach moksha if you're still maintaining all the activities and all the elements of the world within your psyche? How can that be? You have to transcend the world to escape the world, to liberate yourself from the world. Through this comparative discourse, it becomes clear that Gita's wisdom is not confined to any one era or interpretation. Its light passes through the prisms of tradition and the modern world, illuminating the path for all who seek to understand the dance of the gunas, and in doing so, to discover the freedom that lies beyond. And there it is, we wrapped it up. I'm trying to stay under 30 minutes in these videos. I've found that those that are under 30 minutes seem to get the most, people tend to read those or listen to those, actually review them, so to speak. So that's what the 14th chapter is about, the gunas. And I know it may sound a bit confusing to novice ears and to novice thoughts, but you don't take a postgraduate class in the first grade. I mean, you have to go through the grading system to reach the point of understanding and having the mental agility to comprehend. I had to do it. You will have to do it, and I wish you luck with it. So I'm going to go ahead and close as I normally do. I have a little practice closing phrases I use. I want you to be good to each other. First by being good to yourself, and then good to those that are close to you, friends, family, and even strangers, or especially strangers. And the reason I want you to do that is because if we can get this sense of civility back, we've kind of lost it in the modern politics of America in 2025. And I'm not going to go into who helped us lose it. I'm not going to cast blame on anyone. I'm just going to simply say we're not the same country we were 9 months ago, or 10 months ago, I'll say it that way. So I hope we get back to civility and being kind and non-judgmental of each other. And the reason I want that to happen is because I grew up in that world. Well, my world was not perfect. I went through civil rights and integration of schools and on and on and on. So it wasn't perfect. But then again, it wasn't as full of hate in general as seems to be floating amongst friends and neighbors and even strangers nowadays. But I want to wake up again one day in a reconciled world, in a revised world, and be able to look at everyone and say, isn't it wonderful that we can be friendly towards each other again and not have all this animosity and this backbiting and backstabbing and lies and deceit going on, especially in the halls of power. That's about as political as I'm going to get, and that's where I'll end it, my friends. If you enjoyed this, I'm glad. I truly am. If you thought it was over your head, then do a little more research, and you should be able to catch up eventually. Just start back with video 1, and because they tend to get a little harder and harder as I go through them. On number 50, I'm going to soften it up on the last 10. When I finish with the Gita, the 18 chapters, I'll be at number 40 or number 39, and then number 40 through 50 will just be kind of optional. I think I'll just choose a subject and do a discourse on it. They may not be so involved as all of the work I've done so far. I've done the history of yoga. I've done the perspective of a yogi. I've gotten into some heavy duty subject matter here. So again, if you enjoyed it, I'm glad. And if you didn't, that's okay too. You're welcome to come back and try again sometime if you like. So I'm going to go ahead and go, and thank you for your time and your interest. And I will be back. In fact, I intend to do a couple more of these in the next 24 hours, and that way I'll be up to number 16. Then I'll have 4 more to go, and then I'll have 2 more to go, and then I'll be finished with the Gita. Well, good night to you, and again, thank you so much. Bye-bye.